listening to The Lightning Round.
Welcome.
Hello, and welcome to the Dave Kershner Lightning Round podcast. I am your host. It is week 41 of the quadrennial Hunger Games. And, my midweek show is my preparedness show. Because the idiots in D.C. were taking up too much time in my just standard weekly podcast. So I had to break it up. Rest assured, we will talk about many things in episode 29 over the weekend when I release that. Because, wow, normal everyday Americans are having a field day with this moron. But we're here to talk preparedness. So I got a couple articles, got a couple topics to discuss. If you're new to the podcast and or new to preparedness as a whole, or maybe you're just, you've been around for a while and you're kind of in a rut, covering these topics which seem basic are and can be used as good refreshers to kind of jog your memory or provide some motivation or incentive to continue with your continue down the road for yourself, for your family, towards better preparedness, self-sufficiency. We are learning more and more every day about this administration and the lengths that they are going to basically destroy our country. I was half tempted to take the topic of hyperinflation and cover it during this show, but I wanted to stay true to what I had already planned. So we're going to talk hyperinflation in episode 29, but that is definitely a preparedness topic. It's usually a precursor to forms of various societal collapse. I and many other authors in the post-apocalyptic dystopian genres, we touch on hyperinflation. I saw an interesting article about how, and I'm going to cover this more in episode 29, but it basically said that if the administration of yahoos can't get the fuel prices in line and or they continue to do stupid things like shut down another pipeline and tap into our strategic oil reserves, there will be a shortage of food because the farmers can't afford the fuel to farm and till and plant the amount of acreage that it would take to feed not only our nation but the better part of the planet. Most of the stuff we grow, we export. But if we don't have fuel for the tractors, guess what? Tractors don't run on solar and they don't run on windmill power. You need fuel, diesel, and you need all the hydraulics and lubricants to keep that machine running and keep it from breaking down. But these idiots don't understand that. So we have a looming food crisis on top of the increased food costs in your grocery bill and on top of all of your gas prices. So we're going to talk about that kind of stuff in episode 29. That being said, there are a couple websites that years and years and years ago I joined their emailing list. One is askaprepper.com. It's a website that was started by Claude Davis, and he has a number of contributors. People can put in all kinds of articles relating to self-sufficiency and preparedness. And the other one is selfsufficientprojects.com. So there were two articles from selfsufficientprojects.com that I'm going to review with you today. One was about quail, the other was about chickens. And there were two articles from askaprepper.com that kind of caught my interest. One was basically an article detailing how you can stock your pantry with canned goods for under $1 a can. And it's not just extreme couponing. It's just about, patience and knowing where to go. And this particular author recommends or gives examples of how she was able to do. I don't know if it's a she. It's KJ Barber was the author. And the article is titled Walmart Cans Under $1. And there was another article, and I'll get you the author's name here in a bit. But the title of the second article from askaprepper.com was 8 Homesteading Items You Should Get from the Dollar Store. So for somebody like me that has been doing this for a while, these articles are kind of counterintuitive because I've already been doing it. I already know to do it. I already know where to go to do it. But, I don't want my podcast just to be about preparedness and self-sufficiency and reviewing current events for people that are just, 20 years of experience or 10 years of experience that have been doing preparedness, not because they fear any particular style event or calamity, but because they know it makes good sense. And so KJ Barber goes into a little bit of that, and so I thought it would be good to review that. The two self-sufficientproject.com articles are how to raise quails and why you should do it. But then they go in and, I'll tell you about it in a little bit. And the other one was just titled Chickens. That's short and sweet. So the Abigail Demoa wrote both of those articles, so I thought I would. One was from October 1st, the article about chickens, and then the one about quail was from November 3rd. So I'm going to take a look at these 4 articles and kind of relay that information to you and provide my own commentary, because I can do the two things dealing with consumables, whether that be food or assorted materials. But because I live in a suburb, I don't have what is it called? Homeowner Association, HOA. I'm not subject to HOA because I'm not in like a development, I'm just in a suburb, but I am subject to city ordinances, which I have learned precludes me from having livestock like chickens and quail. It precludes me from having any form of wind power generation that is not mounted on the ridge of my home. I can't have it just on a pole in the backyard. But I am allowed to have solar. And I'll have to double check. But I think I could get away with rabbits because they don't make any noise. So it wouldn't alert my neighbors. So, all right, let's go. We'll start with the first article here. Walmart. It's titled Walmart Cans Under $1 by KJ Barber from the askaprepper.com website. All right, well, actually, hold on. So last week I reviewed, and I'm sorry, I just remembered this. Last week I reviewed the battery backups for the Powerwall the N-Phase Ensemble, and the Generac Power Cell. All of my notes that I used for that podcast, after reviewing the YouTube videos, that's up on my blog. So you can go to my website at davidjkershner.com and go into the blog page, and you'll see a post called Episode 26 Show Notes, and that'll give you all of the information from last week's episode. It'll also give you the URLs for the videos if you want to go watch them yourselves. And speaking of the website, and I've mentioned two on this show already. It's Ask a Prepper and Self-Sufficiency Projects. But if you go to my website and you go into the resources menu, there's an option in there called Useful Resources Websites. And this page started out as an appendix on the back of on the tail end of all of my books. When I first started writing them, I was thinking I was being helpful by providing the name of the book that I was using as a reference to help build my storylines and my plot lines and my character sketches, and I also had all the websites for things that I was doing. So that's kind of how this collection started. But it wound up being 5 books, so I wound up with tons of resources. So when I redid all of the books to prep them to get ready for the audio recordings, I pulled the useful resources sections out of all the books, and I plunked them all down into my website. So there are links in here for bees, bread and yeast, bulk food suppliers, charcoal, electrical and mechanical, EMP and solar flare, kind of background information on those, and what do they mean. There's just a slew of information in here. Let's see, there's several articles and several URLs for hugelkultur, which I'm a huge proponent of. But the one that I think people are going to want is actually under a section called Survival Preparedness Forums. So a lot of these websites that I point you to, and there's over a dozen of them here, it's down near the bottom because it's all in alphabetical order based on titles. So you have a whole section for soap that teaches you how to make soap. And then underneath that is survival/preparedness forums. I have belonged to a forum called When the SHTF. So when the shit hits the fan. The website URL is whenshtf.com. And forums are very, very nice. And this goes into preparedness. So you can go into these forums as a member, and you can read through all the different threads. And this one has it, grouped up. If if you got gardening, or you've got ranch, you've got water, you've got livestock. I mean, all these different sections, all these different threads within that forum. And you can go in and you can read about, well, somebody posted a question, or somebody had a problem with this, or somebody implemented a solution to handle X, and then they'll provide details, and you can read everybody's responses. It's very voyeuristic in that regard. But as you are going down this preparedness road, you can go in and ask questions. Hey, I have a question about rainwater catchment. Is it worthwhile to put in an in-ground cistern, or should I just build a rack and put 6, 4, 3 55-gallon drums in a rack to just capture rainwater off the roof, or in-ground fuel versus above-ground fuel. Whatever it is, you can go in to these forums, and somebody's probably already encountered a situation like that or an issue, and they provide kind of guidance, and they provide answers. So, use these resources so that you can build your knowledge base. And it's really what the midweek shows are about. It's about building your knowledge base. Maybe there's a topic that you're not particularly interested in, but you listened because maybe you thought I'd have a different take on it. Or, the midweek shows, I didn't know about, X, whatever it was that I was covering. So, or in the previous episodes where I kind of put preparedness on the back end of my jackassery rants. But I wanted you to know that, so you can use my website. It'll give you a lot of stepping off points. So you can go and continue your own research. And if you really, if that's not your cup of tea and you want, my take on something in particular, there's a contact page. So you can do that too. But I wanted you to know that. So that's all the website stuff. That's the website updates. There's new places to go get website information. Go get it online. But I would. And there's another thing. Under the resources tab is also a page called Useful Resources Books. And I highly recommend, and I talked about this in early episodes not long after the podcast started, but it was about building out your library. You don't want to just, I found a Kindle edition of such and such book, and the book is only in electronic format on your iPad or your Kindle device or your Amazon whatever. That's not going to do you any good if you can't keep that device charged when there's no power. So what I and a lot of people in the preparedness arena recommend highly is to either print it. If it's like, say, website information, you can print that fairly easily. And I said last week, last week, I'm the king of printing stuff. My wife is sick of me going through reams of paper. And I've got little 3-ring binders. Not little, actually, they're about the biggest ones you can get, like the 3-inch ones. And I've got different section labels in there. So if I see an article that piques my interest dealing with, say, heirloom seeds or GMOs, this, that, the other, it goes into my seed/GMO section. Or if I see something of interest regarding solar, it goes into my solar section, or battery backups, and so on and so forth. Gardening is another one. Water, it's just a big, it's a heading called water, and it's everything that I've ever found dealing with water, and it's pretty much an entire binder at this point. But the point is, it's all printed. And so I can take that resource with me, and I can review those resources at whatever future destination I may find myself, and the information's not lost, and I'm not having to rely on, the memory of an article I read 8 years ago. I can simply start going through my resources and say, no. Yep, that's the article I'm talking about. This is the one that I need to implement. You guys have, let's go through this together or whatever. But beyond that, the Useful Resources Books page breaks down about, shnikes, over 150 books, I think, is what I've got on here right now. And it's broken up, and I give you a list of every single nonfiction book that I've got. And it starts off with 21 Native Wild Edible Plants by Morris Koczynski, and it ends with Woodcraft by E.H. Krebs. And it's in alphabetical order by the name of the book, not the author. So there's a lot of stuff in here that I have all these books. And to be honest with you, what I actually need to do at this point is start pre-positioning some of my stuff. Because I know I'm going to one of two locations, and I should start moving some things. And then I have another section about autobiography and biographies. I read some really interesting books John Meacham wrote one about FDR and Churchill called Franklin and Winston. That was a great read. I read a biography. I think it was actually an autobiography. Douglas MacArthur wrote one called Reminiscences. Lauren Hillenbrand, she wrote the book called Unbroken. They actually made that one into a movie. And then I give you a number of fiction for entertainment purposes mostly, but there's a lot to be found in these fiction pieces that could prove useful. So what I like to do is when I'm reading fiction and I come across a concept that I say, "Oh, that's of interest. That's something I need to do more research on." I take a little note, and then I go online. I go to Amazon.com and I look for certain keywords. Maybe I can find a book on that particular topic, or I'll go onto my various websites that I like to use and see if I can find any articles, like going to AskAPrepper.com or going to the James Wesley Rawls survival blog website and so on and so forth, to go dig into that particular topic and learn as much as I can about that. And usually somebody along the way has provided a resource to say, if you'd like to learn more about this, go read this book by so-and-so, and go read this book by so-and-so. James Wesley Rawls is really good about doing that. He kind of tells you what his influences are, and tells you what kind of books somebody was reading. He puts a lot of that stuff into his writings as well. So, it's about always trying to look at things through the prism of preparedness and self-sufficiency. So you've got fiction series, and you also have fictional books as well. Some of them are solely for entertainment purposes. One of the books that I really liked a lot was called South Abroad. That was by Pat Conroy. That has nothing to do with preparedness or self-sufficiency, and there are some graphic sections in there. So if you do find yourself without power and somebody has a melodic voice that is not so monotone, and you're headed down a road. What I'm talking about here is basically an old school fireside chat, because you don't have electricity, you don't have enough electricity to run anything more than a few bulbs. You're constantly using your solar panels to charge batteries to keep a CB running or something, or a ham radio. But in terms of entertainment, unless you can keep a battery charged in a laptop, you're not watching movies. Internet's likely down, so you're not streaming anything, so Netflix isn't going to do you any good. So your next best bet after that is somebody actually reading a book. That's not one that I would read with kids in the room, South Abroad, I mean. But there was a very entertaining book called The Vintage Caper by Peter Maylie. He's the guy who did A Year in Provence. I really enjoy those books. Frances Mays, she wrote the book Under the Sun. So these are books that have a lot of visual descriptions of the things that they're around, so that, if you've got the spatial ability, you can picture yourself and imagine yourself in these locations, and that will help reduce a lot of stress that would come from kind of a survival situation where, society is broken down. And some of the things that this administration is doing, it sure as heck looks like that's where we're headed. I'm not going to be Chicken Little and say the sky is falling, but man, I don't know if this guy's got any feet left. He shot himself so many times in the foot. He's down to nubs. So anyway, that's 24 minutes of randomness dealing with preparedness. But all right, now let's look at these articles, and they're short reads. These are not novellas, okay? These are quick hits. Give me the facts. Here's some information you might want to be aware of, things to keep in mind. So what KJ Barber has kind of put down in the article, Walmart cans under $1, is, obviously it's stuff that I already know. But like I said, not everybody's at the same point that I'm at in their preparedness journey. So, that being said, what KJ Barber had to say was, quote, "There are so many reasons why it's a good idea to build up your pantry with low-cost items with a long shelf life. One of which is having a good supply of food for survival helps to give peace of mind if something were to happen and food becomes scarce." End quote. So, we already see that, okay? We are already seeing the scarcity of certain food items. There was literally a sign posted in my grocery store that I took a picture of, and I sent it over to John Jeffers, and I was like, "Hey, man, my grocer just put this up in the store," and he said, "This is what I've been talking about." And what the sign said was, "Not seeing what you need? Due to supply chain complications and strikes, there are many product shortages. We are working hard to try and get products back on the shelf. We get deliveries 7 days a week. However, there are products that are either in short supply or not available. Top out-of-stock items include cream cheese, creamer, Stonyfield yogurt, Horizon milk, diet drinks," and in parentheses it says Slim Fast, "protein powders, mouthwash, and more." So this is up in my grocery store. And what KJ Barber is alluding to is that very phenomenon. But there could be a million reasons for shortages. Right now, we just have, Pete Buttigieg on 2 months of paternity leave for adopted children as a male, as the head of the Department of Transportation. Yeah, that sounds right. We've got an infrastructure package that these 14, 13, 15 rhinos, whoever they were, they buckled and folded and gave the Dems a win. Kind of saw it coming. You figured something like that was going to happen. But throwing money at the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles for infrastructure upgrades is not going to solve the supply chain problem. The supply chain problem, there's 111 ships out there now, by the way. If you're wondering where your widget is, it's probably on one of those 111 ships. There's 111 out there, and they estimated, the news report I saw last night, this is on local news, by the way, they estimated that by the end of the week there'd be another 30 to 35 ships waiting in line to get unloaded at one of these two ports. Now, here's my question. Why don't they just send them refueling tankers and tell them to go up through the Panama Canal and come to the East Coast, the Port of Savannah or Charleston or Tampa, someplace in Texas. I mean, there's plenty of ports in the United States. I don't know why all of these are sitting outside of these two ports, but the Biden administration's throwing a couple $1 billion for infrastructure upgrades with these two ports. Personally, I think that they got blackmailed into giving them that money by the port authorities out there, but I haven't seen any articles to that fact. It's just my hunch. And then you've got 80,000 you're short 80,000 truckers. And the truckers are trying to get exemptions from the installed administration for the vax mandates because they said an estimated 30 to 50%, depending on the trucking company, have employees that have said, if you implement the vax mandate, I quit. So not only are you 80,000 employees short right now, but your vax mandate's going to take us to about 120 to 150,000 truckers short. So if you're looking to change your career and you like the open road, maybe you want to get into trucking. They've got some pretty big signing bonuses these days. Assuming that you're vaccinated, because apparently they're going to discriminate against you if you are not. So, anyway, back to the article. KJ Barber goes on to say, let's see, if something were to happen and food becomes scarce, is that far-fetched? Not at all. If the year of COVID taught us anything, is that shortages can and will happen for sure. Another reason to consider stocking up on inexpensive non-perishables is to save money. We are all vulnerable to being in the position someday when we can't afford a long grocery list for the week or longer. In the past year, people have lost jobs or spouses or both, and we don't always have much warning when our finances will be in jeopardy or for how long that will last. Also, convenience is nice when it comes to busy families, a health crisis, or just poor management skills. I actually wrote about this in my book. Let's review. So in preparing to prepare, because, I've got the book, I wrote the book, Chapter 3, Minor Disruptions, there's a section called Food, and I literally wrote, when people ask me for advice regarding their desire to begin preparing to prepare, I generally provide the following response. Number 1, answer the question, what are you preparing for? And number 2, regardless of that answer, start small. Building a pantry, this I'm not reading out of the book now, I'm commenting on the article. Building a pantry with a healthy supply of stored food for under $1 a can is a good place to start small. I went on to say, starting small is sound advice because your intention may very well be to prepare for the absolute worst, a major disruption. Your finances, however, will probably dictate otherwise. The good news is that when it comes to food, as it pertains to a minor disruption, you have a wide variety of options. For example, you could buy extras of family favorites and set those aside each time. An assortment of freeze-dried vacuum-sealed packages, large number 10 cans, canning supplies, and can your own food. You can get a dehydrator, a vacuum sealer, food-grade barrels, and package your own food. So some of those are more advanced concepts like canning, dehydrating, vacuum sealing, and then doing food-grade barrels. But what I tell people when I tell them to start small, what I then tell them is FEMA recommends a 3 to 4 day supply of extra food and water for every single person and animal in the house. My recommendation is 2 weeks. Because even if there is a tragedy in the families, a death in the family or a severe injury, if you have 2 weeks worth of food and water in your house, you don't need to worry about going to the store, or you don't need to worry about asking a relative, a friend, a neighbor to go pick up some staples and put them in your fridge for you or anything like that. You have everything that you need, and you don't have to concern yourself with those things. Those things also come in handy when you have a sudden job loss, like a lot of people are encountering these days. They go into work on a Friday, and they're told Friday morning, you have 2 hours to clean out your desk. We're letting everybody go because we're going to shut the doors due to COVID. And that's happening a lot. So I recommend a 2-week supply. KJ Barber has kind of put together a little list, and because she's talking about Walmart, the Walmart brand is called Great Value. So in their recommendation, they're basically saying, and a lot of people are going to recommend the same things. If you can get cans of beans, whether they're pinto, kidney, black, great northern beans, refried beans, beans in general are a great source of protein, and they pretty much go with just about any meal. And as far as I know, there's no known allergies to beans, but I don't know. There's so many freaking allergies these days. After that, KJ Barber recommends if you can usually find cans of canned pineapple, canned fruit. Canned pineapple specifically is what they make note of. You can usually find that for under $1 a can. But it's the other stuff that you really have trouble finding, like pears and peaches and fruit cocktails. Those come in usually little cans, or they'll have packages of 6. You can get like 6 cans of pears for $4. Okay, so now every can's less than $1, so that's a good buy. But if it was 6 cans of pears for $6, you're at $1 a can. So maybe you want to wait. You want to try and find it so when it's less than $6 a can. They went on to talk about vegetables. So you can, whatever's usually carried at Walmart. I mean, you can find just about every freaking type of canned vegetables. You got corn, beans, and peas. Those are your big ones. But beyond that, you can find carrots and spinach, mixed vegetables, which usually corn, peas, carrots. Sometimes they throw lima beans in there. I freaking hate lima beans. Canned potatoes, beets, cabbage, mushrooms, green chilies, and even whoever they are, KJ is, they put hominy on there. You say hominy to me, and I'm thinking grits. So I'm not sure what that is. I've never encountered that one. But the point is, if you had an extra, even just $10 a week, you can get 10 to 15 cans of food that you could put onto your storage shelves. You put the oldest stuff in the back. I'm sorry, put the newest stuff that you just bought with an expiration date that's the furthest in the future in the back, and then use the stuff that's going to expire closer to the front. So you make sure you use that first. And it's called stock rotation. So that's what you want to do. But if you had an extra $10, you could go get 10 to 15 cans and just sock it away. You do that enough times, and you don't just have a shelf of extra food. You have an entire shelving unit of extra food. My wife, she's like, okay, you've got enough of that. Stop buying that. And I'm like, but I really like it. She's like, stop it. They went on to talk about, what else did they bring up? You can get sweet potatoes or yams, collard greens, turnip greens, mixed greens, and asparagus. So these are all canned goods that you can get that are veggies as well. Veggie-ish, I guess. And then they went on to talk about canned meat. So you got Vienna sausage and ham and potted meat. My mother-in-law loves Spam. I don't know why, but she does. And she has cans upon cans upon cans of this stuff. And I took one time, and I thought, well, I'm going to try this, And she was like, oh, here's what you do. You get it to come out of the can a little bit, and it sounds absolutely disgusting coming out of the can. It's like, that's what it sounds like. And you're just like, the suction and the liquid, it's like trying to dump a can of wet dog food, and you're just like, oh, gross. But what she does is she gets it out of the can, and then she cuts little 1/4-inch thick slices, and she throws it up in the frying pan, and that's it. That's all she does. She just kind of browns it and heats it up, and she loves it. And I tried it, and I was just like, I was polite, and I finished what was served to me, but that is not something that I'm going out of my way to go find. So KJ Barber, let's go back to the article. KJ Barber talked about soups as well. My family loves chicken noodle soup and tomato soup, and they also love a number of my homemade soups, but we're talking about getting canned soups for under $1 that you can stock on your shelves. Any soup that starts with the words cream of, whether that's chicken or mushroom or whatever, whenever I see the term cream of something soup, I automatically start thinking casseroles. Because nobody's going to eat just a bowl of cream of mushroom soup. Okay? You're going to mix that with something else, usually. At least that's what I did. And I'm not a fan of casseroles, but when it comes to preparedness and self-sufficiency and making things last for as long as possible, a casserole is a good way to go. It takes very few ingredients. You're usually making a large batch. So you've got your, 9.5 or 8.5 by 11 Pyrex dish or something bigger or decorative, or you're using the 8x8 square, whatever. But you and your family can eat on that for 2 or 3 or 4 days, depending on, portion size. So casseroles, you make one casserole with 4 or 5 ingredients that cost you, $6 in ingredients, but you got to eat it for 4 days. So do the math. That's like 75 cents a day per person in a family of 4. That's what you just fed, So it's that kind of thought process that you need to use when you approach things like trying to stock up your pantry. Let's see. They also talked about canned meals. Canned meals, by their definition, it would be like ravioli, macaroni and cheese, hash, beefaroni, SpaghettiOs, things of that nature. And I got to tell you, I have never seen almost any of these things for under $1. But maybe you can find it. Maybe that's where you might want to come in with some coupons or something. And then she went on to present present some basic recipes. So that was the article on Walmart cans for under $1. The next one is in the same vein, things that you can do for your homestead or your home for cheap. That's the goal. Is you're trying to do as much as you can for the least amount that you can. And the article, 8 homesteading items you should get from the dollar store. This article came from AskAPrepper.com, was published on September 30th, and the author's name was Christine C. C as in the initial. A lot of the people that post on these websites don't use their full name. It's just like KJ Barber, they're Christine C. They want to maintain some degree of anonymity. But for this Christine, she wrote, "It's no secret that homesteaders and off-grid folk are about as independent as they come. When it comes to necessities, making or producing as much as they can on their own land to provide for their basic needs is a major lifestyle goal. However, not all of us are there yet. For a lot of homesteaders, monthly or bi-monthly trips to town are necessary. When you can't make or craft an item that you need for your homestead, there's a great place to get essentials that you may be overlooking. This place houses a ton of items for a fraction of the cost found at other shops. Yep, you guessed it, the dollar store. Perhaps unfairly so, the dollar store is often viewed as having a bad reputation. Sometimes people discredit these shops for being home to stockpiles of plastic junk that does little more than collect dust, but this is far from accurate. You might be surprised to find that there are actually some extremely useful homestead items at dollar stores, especially if you know exactly what to look for." So she provided 8 items that you could find at a dollar store. And they're not numbered, they're not in alphabetical order, but there's 8 of them. So let's call it Christine C's top 8 items from a dollar store. Number 1, the first item is duct tape. The second one is dental floss. The third one is garbage bags. The fourth one is baking soda. The fifth one is a sewing kit. Actually, I have purchased. I bought every single one that they had. And I think they had like 12 or 15 of them. And it was a fairly, I wouldn't call it, it's not like my wife's sewing kit, but it's enough. It's like a little pouch, and it's got all kinds of stuff in there, from like little scissors. It's got a roll of thread. It's got a couple needles. It's got a number of different things. So the fifth item was a sewing kit. The sixth one was gloves. So they have different types of gloves. They have work gloves and they have rubber gloves for gardening and livestock and heavy duty, compost pile stuff, whatever. Number 7 is food storage containers and glass jars. So she's talking about Tupperware and glass jars. And then finally you have buckets and large bowls. That was her 8th item. So to read them off again, just to be thorough: duct tape, dental floss, garbage bags, baking soda, sewing kits, gloves, food storage containers and glass jars, then lastly buckets and large bowls. So, all right, we're at 45 minutes. I'm going to move chickens and quail to next week. And hopefully I won't ramble as much as I did, but there was a lot of background information there. There was a lot of website information there. There was a lot of expertise being shared to tell you where you can go find additional information outside of, say, podcasts that you can go read. It's something that you can put your hands and your fingertips on, printing things, buying things, books of that nature. But take advantage of these electronic resources while you can, because for $5, which is about how much a ream of paper costs, you can print 500 pages worth of useful information for $5. Granted, you probably have to replace your printer cartridge when you're done. There's some added cost there. But you can print 500 pages of stuff for, $5 worth of paper and, however much your printer cartridge is. Now imagine if you tried to get 500 pages of information by purchasing paperback books on Amazon, okay? And the stuff that you're going to get in that book is not always going to be 100% useful to you. Unlike my book, Preparing to Prepare, which is 100% useful to you, so you should pick up a copy of that. But when it comes to preparedness, it's about looking at things and how those things can benefit you and your family and your community, your enclave, your group of friends. However you're going to plan to survive any type of collapse or calamity. You need to be looking at these things and saying, is this going to be useful to help me do X when Z situation arrives or Y situation arrives? And then test those things. Is it durable? Was it worth the value? And when it comes to a knowledge base, you can't put a price on it. Because if you don't know how to do something, and you don't have ability to gain access to that information, and you're going to rely solely on your ability to remember something, 9 out of 10 of us are screwed. Because I've forgotten more stuff than I really should have. But if I'm put in a certain situation, things come back to me. I'm like, I remember that. So get as much, increase your knowledge base as much as you can. That's the whole real point that I'm trying to make here today. And by increasing your knowledge base, it makes you that much more prepared. It makes you that much more self-sufficient. All right, that's it for today. We'll talk some more preparedness next week. We'll go over chickens and quails and maybe something else. I'll see if I can find something. All right, have a good week. We'll talk to you soon. Actually, I'll talk to you over the weekend for the He Who Shall Not Be Named Jackassery show that comes out on Saturdays. All right, talk soon. Bye-bye.
Happy Hunger Games. And may the odds be ever in your favor.